sell or trade in your car for another one.
It is 7:30 and you're listening to Smooth 98.1 FM Lagos. This is Smooth Breakfast with Folu and myself, Valentine.
Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. This morning we'll look at some of the stories on our national papers, or newspapers actually. And Nwaji's here. Nwaji is going to take on all the stories this morning.
Good morning, Lagos. I am saddled with the wonderful responsibility of handling that job.
Fantastic. Good morning, Big Waj. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys?
Excellent. I'm great. I know Waji was a little bit upset with my England tweet.
Yeah, don't worry, you're going to meet Sweden tomorrow.
I don't mind. It's okay. I've already done
Come
well.
igen Sverige.
Well, I've already done well. Come on, England.
Come
Come on.
Perennial underachievers.
Watch all the squabbles on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/smooth91 FM Lagos. There you can also comment 981. Also on Twitter with the hashtag freshlypressed981. Our first story is from Tribune newspaper. Buhari signs executive order to freeze suspicious assets. So President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday signed an executive order number 6, that's the sixth order he signed in 2018, among others, to restrict dealings in suspicious assets subject to investigation or inquiry bordering on corruption. What do you make of this, Waji?
Well, I mean, look, we criticize Buhari all we want, the issues with his economic plans and things of that nature, but the one thing you have to look at with regards to the legacy, at least of this first term, is how he has tackled and put the necessary instruments in place to handle corruption. This is a fantastic aspect with regards to how this story is written. It lays out very well a very detailed plan regarding how they want to now manage the distribution and transactions of assets that lead to corrupt practices. When you now begin to look at the figures that are in play regarding just the sheer amount of profile that corruption has related to, you're looking at something of 595 billion naira. That's 1.6 billion dollars. I mean, that's that. So the conversation now becomes, we can put all these things in place. You have TSA, you have BVN, and you have all these things that begin to track, and it has reduced the proliferation of public funds that go into private hands, etc., etc. But for me, there's a for people, so that way they don't go in with ulterior motives to get into businesses and deals of that nature. Going into government because of the ease of access to this kind of fund. That thing, you now begin to see less individuals going in for those reasons and more technocrats and more service-oriented individuals wanting to actually go into government. So that's the philosophical component that needs to be attached to how you begin to handle these problems. So as laudable as these things are, and as wonderful as it may take care of the current situation, you still have individuals who still aspire. Because the problem is, you take care of all these things, people still get creative.
You cut corners.
You still cut corners, exactly. So you still have to figure out ways to now come up with new instruments and new ways to tackle corruption. So if you can begin to work on the philosophical components from day one, which is making the work of government very unattractive, then we may begin to see some changes with regards to people's attitudes when they go into public service.
Here's also a place of concern for me. I'm wondering how long it would take for this executive order to come into force. When is it applied?
Well, look back to TSA and BVN. It wasn't necessarily an overt period of time. There are certain things that you obviously need to put in place to make sure that these things work. So I don't necessarily think it's going to, I hope it's not going to take that long. It's just a question of just putting the right measures in place to just get it up and going.
Thank you very much, Waji. Vanguard newspaper is next. Holding Bay, NPA seals up Tinkan Container Terminal. So the Nigerian Ports Authority, NPA, has ordered the sealing up of Tinkan Island Container Terminal at TICT following the failure of shipping companies using the terminal to provide holding bays for their empty containers. And this is even as some shipping companies as well as terminal operators are smiling to the banks daily by slamming agents. In this story, two things raises concern. One is, it seems like the Tinkan terminal operators have been using this as a deliberate attempt to pile up charges, for their customers, and also
whenever you mention traffic in a pub, I have PTSD. So that always happens. But a very long time. So what I want to understand is, why are they going after this particular terminal operator? MPA also benefit from the lack of holding bays
The demurrage
because
charge.
when you don't have holding bays, you're paying these charges, and MPA gets a cut. And they recorded ridiculous profits, them and the Nigerian Customs Services last year and the year before that, because of the amount of money that they're just receiving from these charges alone. This is not even including excise duty, import duty, and anything else, just literally charges of those containers and trucks sitting on the road waiting to come into the ports. So why all of a sudden is it like a light bulb moment that, okay, this one particular terminal operator doesn't have a holding base, so therefore we're going to see up their property? You need to close all of them all, because none of them have holding base. None of them have enough capacity to handle the volume of importation that is coming into this country. Why? Because the Apapa Tin Can area was not built for road transportation of these goods and services. Service that has been pretty much out of work for maybe 40 years, that was meant to now transport from Apapa to all parts of the country and also into West Africa. But for some reason, one regime change after the other, that construction was never completed. So as a result of that, people now had to start using initially the Apapa Oshodi Expressway, thank you very much. That's what they were using. So that now blocked. They destroyed those roads. So in about maybe 2012, 2013, thereabouts, they now decided, okay, fine, they're now going to come back within Lagos, which is why you're now seeing those traffic situations at Ijora. So when MPA is saying they're closing this because they don't have holding base, no, man, it's everybody doesn't have a holding base. So why are you particularly attacking these guys? They did that, what happened? And let's just be real about it. So to your initial question about does it alleviate the traffic situation? It should, in theory, but these trucks and guys are coming from as far as Borno. So they're going to tell you, well, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
We're just going to wait on circumstances until these guys sitting there for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, if you just go to Ijora, you just literally
there right now.
They're right now. They're there 24 hours a day. What's been done is just to put a band-aid plaster over Folu, don't get at me. or show what you've done. So what you've done is just have them line up in one particular component, but they break that rule off. So I do not believe it's had a lasting impact on traffic. What needs to be done is they need to have a serious conversation about making sure they have those railroad networks operating to transport those goods. You need to get the other ports across the country and working, and other parts of the southern areas of Nigeria working, so that you can now begin to have a distribution of all these goods and services, so it doesn't all go into Apapa and just conjure up.
Thank you, Nwaji.
All right, thank you very much. Nonso sent in a message this morning saying, as laudable as the fight against corruption may be, the security of human lives should top the list of priorities. Thank you very much for that, Nonso, but that's not the story.
False equivalency.
Amaka sent in this one saying, I beg to differ with Nwaji. The administration has scored low in economic and corruption policy implementation. TSA and BVN were not their initiative, as says Amaka. While this one is in from... You need to put your names to your messages, please, so that we can read them out. Yinka says, you guys know the funny things? Those rails exist. I saw it with my eyes. So who is deliberately stopping them being used?
Good questions. This the newspaper is next. PenCom begins pre-retirement verification, enrollment of workers in Enugu. So no fewer, as the report has it, no fewer than 1,000 employees of the federal government are due to retire in 2019, and they are expected to appear at the Enugu Center for the week-long pre-retirement verification and enrollment of employees operating under the contributory pension scheme. Your thoughts, Nwaji?
All right, well, so here's PenCom, another government agency that is actually trying their very best to ensure that they have a pension scheme in place for Nigerians, so that when you retire, you have funds that you can access and benefit from. So this component is now looking at individuals who are currently about to retire, now getting into a system of putting instruments in place for them to have ease of access when they do retire. So this is very, very laudable as an exercise. And according to the article, it's for about 1,000 people across 15 centers in the country. So they're going to do that exercise, registration, pre-retirement verification, and all those wonderful things. So PenCom, they really do know what they're doing. They've been on the money for the last 8 to 10 years, I believe, with regards to ensuring that people have those contribution schemes where you can put something, your employer is now mandated to make sure they contribute towards your pension scheme. You get a monthly alert you can check so that you know what's in the kitty for you at the point that you retire. So once again, I think this is just now for me. This exercise is to ensure that people are fully aware of what to do and also understand the ease of access to it, because a lot of paperwork and a lot of processes involved. So if you understand it, this way ahead before you retire, so that when you do retire, there's no confusion or conversation about how to access your funds. You can set it up where you're just getting a monthly payment.
Yeah, and perhaps it eliminates cases where we'll have people who are probably passed on. And,
Exactly.
yeah,
so you can figure out who are the beneficiaries of those things.
Yeah.
Just to take a step backwards, I clarify the BVN TSA. Yes, the Jonathan administration did create the BVN and TSA policies, but it was the Buhari administration that implemented it. So when we talk about implementation, well, I mean, that's what Nwaji addressed, the implementation of it. So yeah.
Thank you, Folu.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Guardian newspaper is next. Has a story that's rather cheering, talking about the Air Peace move to inaugurate an all-female flight on Abuja Owerri routes.
Because who run the world?
Girls, right? So yesterday, Air Peace launched an all-female flight from Lagos Abuja, Abuja Owerri, and Owerri Abuja, plus Abuja Lagos routes. What do you think of this?
Well, Valentine, I absolutely love this story.
Yes,
I love it for various reasons. Female in flight, female empowerment. I think these are part of the things that make us even more progressive and more encouraging for women to just get out there into the world and demonstrate their full capacity to be awesome. So yeah, I'm all for it. I love it. When you're a woman is a happy world.
Thank you so much. Because I do remember my first all-female flight. I didn't know it was an all-female flight till we landed, and I remember thinking, I need to actually comment on the landing. Like, it was so nice and smooth. And then it was an East African country as well.
But you know what's funny? It's not like this is some groundbreaking thing. We've had female pilots in Nigeria for like quite a number of years. Like in the Nigerian Airways days, there was a few female pilots who were handling business.
My cousin's a pilot, Captain
Okay,
Cassie, so big shout out to her. So yeah, they are there, but it's nice to be recognized and to remind women and girls listening everywhere that yes, being a pilot is valid for you. It's a valid dream.
You know what's an interesting question that will be used on a different platform? For instance, if you took out the poll and asked who would you feel more comfortable flying, you, a male or a female pilot?
In Nigeria,
I would say female pilots anytime.
I mean,
it would be interesting to see what that poll would say. Guys, follow us at Smooth 981 FM. I think that's a poll that we're definitely going to be running this morning because I definitely want to know what our listeners will say.
Y'all looking for trouble.
This is not a trap. It's not a trap. We're not setting you up. We're just curious here. We've got more messages coming in before we move on to our next set of stories. The TSA was also partly implemented to save the system from shock, so please set the record straight. Again, Shagun was setting the record straight. Like
don't have enough details. I think this article needs to be careful. So it's not that necessarily that the Trans-Sahara pipeline is something that works. It's somewhat has been absorbed and replaced.
Yes, by
happening now is that there's a lot of investment happening between the governments of Nigeria and the governments of Morocco.
Okay.
There's been a lot of conversation between going on.
They look very friendly.
Very friendly. They're having a bromance moment. So I think there's a lot of conversations happening. This pipeline is meant to ensure that we have a lot of economic activity, a lot of regions that will be covered. And I think for me, one of the most attractive components is that it goes up all the way through the Sahel and up to Morocco, and then eventually to tap into Europe. So that gives us a better opportunity for our export opportunities, which now removes the current pressure on exports through the seas, et cetera, et cetera. So let's hope that the financing happens, especially with the amount of investment and care that both governments are handling. Once again, I don't have the details of the Nigerian-Algeria relationship with the Trans-Saharan pipeline, so I'm not sure if that same amount of detail went into that with the governments. But if both government heads are involved, I would like to believe that they have and see and know where the money's coming from to be able to see this through.
And then very quickly, any comments on the fear for the project's environmental implications? Because this is a gas pipeline that's going to run several thousand kilometers across countries.
I would like to believe that with the amount of technology and science that's been put in place, gas is a lot cleaner than oil. So I would hope that they have the right measures in place to ensure that the lubricants and the pipes are properly insulated and properly carbonated to maintain that gas. Now, when you now deal with things like vandalism, et cetera, and it could be exposed to gas, that could be potentially dangerous. So the environmental concerns needs to be seriously talked about. You need to look at through to make sure that a lot of vegetation is not necessarily affected. A lot of communities are not affected. So I think there's a certain radius that you keep a gas pipeline away from certain communities to ensure that those communities are not in danger. So as those are with the National Protection Acts, I hope that they get into cognizance when they're building.
Excellent stuff. YG. People, the WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. But if you search on Twitter with the hashtag as well, freshly pressed 981, you'll see the even when the show is done, you can hit the replay button, and you definitely want to, because we're about to start running a poll. And I really do want to know which who you would rather fly, you male or female. Let us know.
It's on Twitter.
Indeed, it is up on Twitter right now. So up next, our next taking us from ThisDay newspaper, and it says that the National Emergency and Management Agency, NEMA, receives 155 Chinese that have been trapped in Libya in their futile attempt to cross over to Europe for greener pastures. And now we keep seeing stories of returnees and people coming back in, and we know that YG, there tends to be a little bit of negativity surrounding the returnees sometimes, in terms of people criticizing the government and administration for perhaps not doing more to help them settle in back home. What are your thoughts on this story?
I honestly don't know what that means with regards to the government doing more to settle you back in. Did you go to the government to tell them that you were going to go ahead and illegally cross into other nations to get to greener pastures in Europe?
I mean, but
I'm not going to go
okay.
context okay, because this thing is tiring me out. When you go into this particular article, there's an individual here that mentions how much money they raised to get to Libya, to get into Europe, versus what they had to pay. No, they raised a total of 2.3 million naira to get there, and the fact they're trying to cash and you're looking for greener pastures in Europe is troubling. There is a serious mental moment had knew that you use that money to start business to be flourishing.
Well, you say this, but listen, there is something to be said for education, and I'm not talking just literacy. I'm talking awareness of opportunities and possibilities. And maybe some people could argue that if our administrations did more to create awareness in the grassroots of how people could create jobs for themselves, how they could empower themselves, because, like you said, people are able sums of money actually to relocate and to escape to greener pastures, where arguably it will actually be harder for them to settle in, because then and they're living in this quasi.
Yes.
So, but perhaps we could be doing more to let people know our opportunities and what those opportunities are, because we.
Your point about can the government do more to raise it also starts at home. Case of fundamental. News a couple of weeks ago, 3,000 dead bodies, people trying to cross into Europe.
Terrible.
Do you want to know what percentage of that number are Nigerians?
Yeah.
But you can now rethink your situation here in Nigeria. Have access to funds, or whatever the case may be. Maybe go back to school or put money towards a business. You rather risk your life because that sweet opportunity is there. We're not at war, okay? You're not under persecution, so you're not going there under the amnesty of somebody who is seeking refuge. No, you're going there as an economic migrant. That is the only thing you're going to be filing for, which is a different classification than those that are coming out of Syria and other war-torn countries. And this is what Nigerians get confused about all the time. When you go there, you're seeking asylum. No, asylum is for individuals who are coming from war-torn zones. You are going there as an economic migrant. It's a big difference. So the conversation now becomes, you're getting to Libya. It's clear, if we catch you, you're going to jail for 7 years. Done. It's not even a conversation anymore. So you really need to come back to the home front, cultural situation, your religious institutions, your family, your community, who are talking to you and telling you your what are those conversations that are happening?
Thank you very much for that.
Is.
Thank you, YG. As an important message here that I'm going to read out just to illustrate a point, this administration versus that administration. Shegun says all those who want to attribute the successes of this administration to looting during GJ's government,
like
which
that.
is amended. But to go a step further, that as we should be happy when previous governments, because government is meant to be a continuum. So trying to then start seeing things and saying you did this, you did that, that's part of what we're criticizing this administration for doing. Stop separating, just carry on the good work. If it's good, rent. What do you think?
When I moved back to Nigeria many years ago, and looking, were asking, I actually never quite understood it. And till tomorrow, I still struggle with the philosophy of it. Not just necessarily from just why you're asking for that amount of money up front, but what I've always believed about cash is fluidity. If you're collecting rent on a monthly basis, there's so much you can do with it on a 28 to 30-day cycle. So that now means you're cash rich with regards to if you're collecting monthly rent versus waiting for 2-3 years to get large sums of money. I know a lot of landlords, you'd like to use those large sums of money for capital projects, etc., but you can replace that with service charge. And what happens is that if you can go to any financial institution and demonstrate inflows on a monthly basis, you can raise that money at very low interest rates to be able to do the capital projects. So I don't understand why landlords are not thinking in that capacity.
Perhaps an argument on the side of the landlords would be that the trust that their tenants would continue to pay, because it's very difficult to evict somebody once they've moved in and they're sitting, they're giving you 1 month, okay, then the next month everyone is speaking English. Chasing people.
So let me throw that back at you, because where I currently live now, the amount of verification that I had to do, and I purchased that property on the landlord, was not a joke. That you needed things from my bank, you needed affidavits from my job, you needed all sorts of things, so you needed guarantors in place. So in the event that I decide to get funding, there are like 3 or 4 people that they can go to come
collect.
and cash you.
Okay.
You understand? So all those have to do your KYC with regards to who you're renting to, so that if that comes up, you're protected.
And do you think it's easier now because with the implementation of BVN and things
easier,
like this?
100% easier. I'm speaking for myself, so I know what was put in place. So it's very doable. You have those things in place, you can handle them.
Fantastic.
We have a message in from Femi in VI talking about the executive order. It says it is suspicious. Talking about the executive order on suspicious assets, it's a good one as long as it's not focused on perceived political enemies, which is most likely the case, according to him. So these are. There are many suspicious assets belonging to personalities in the presidency. Charity, he said. Here from Nnamdi, he says PNB knows nothing about building a strong institution. The past administration and they didn't.
Well, let's just move on. Not on a large scale. We have more recent comments.
Yeah, Fumi. Okay,
Nigeria. Who is Fumi? Excuse me. Ando, be careful. Folu's in the studio. That's the only female here.
Yeah, that's right.
What did she say?
Nwaji. It says the Nigerians.
Yeah.
She said what?
Yes, let's keep it moving.
Please carry on.
Nigerians are getting refugee status in Europe, especially in Scandinavian countries. They claim to be from middle belts or nah. Okay, all right, moving on.
All right, this next story, our final story actually, it's a viral video. Let's talk about policemen that assaulted the lawyer, but now from the New Telegraph, they're being held for assaulting said lawyer. I'm sure a number of you may have seen quite a worrying video showing officers in black t-shirts with police written on it assaulting a young lawyer, one Olakunle Karim, who was allegedly demanding for his salary from a boss, and then the man invited policemen, and then they proceeded to assault him. Really horrifying stuff. Nwaji, but we're being told that they've been arrested now. What are your thoughts on this?
We need to stop using the police for our personal issues. Okay, that's not what they're there for. Will they also go because you're going to give them and tip them some money? Yes, but you create a serious social problem. You and an individual, especially employee and employer, have a dispute, and then something now breaks down. You now call the police. The police are literally just there to now just aggravate the situation unnecessarily. So Nigerians, can we stop calling the police to handle domestic matters, okay, personal matters? They have no business involved in that. And police, can you to some cases arrest and fine people who come to you and say, oh, that this person doesn't want to do this and do that? That's not what they're there for. All right, so this is a very unfortunate situation. I hope wasn't too badly hurt. If he was, then getting the necessary, and people just need to be more cognizant. We are in the social media age. Everybody has a phone, everybody has a video camera. You will get called out, you will get caught. So please, let's just comport ourselves properly and endeavor to do the right.
A message from laugh my yeah. Rent in arrears. Don't make me laugh a big. That's his message. Mr. Waji, please, I pose it to you. Okay, to
What
stretch.
is Dad? Is that his name? What's his name?
Waji.
No, he's talking to Waji.
Oh, okay. Boy, he doesn't know the right spelling.
No,
Okay.
please send in your name because we don't know who that is. And whenever you send in messages, put your name to it.
Tosin Daniel says, cannot believe my luck yesterday. Drove Mr. Bakari to.
I think Mr. Isi will be a bit concerned about stalking.
Okay, so Akimbode Tenitokwe says, I'm wondering why Saraki's name was excluded from the executive order list. That was my story. We'll move on to Twitter now. We have a message here from Bola Supreme. He says, Flexmaster Nate, he says, I suspect NPA's action is driven by the ease of doing business initiative. Perhaps this was done to force the operator to source alternative locations to keeping empty containers, and there are definitely more creative solutions to this insufficient holding bad place issue. All right, very quickly.
And then our YouTube, we've got a couple of comments up there. Tijani Akane says, male pilots, of course, straight away. And I expect a lot of people are going to respond that way. But let's see. Afala Shadifayemi says, I agree with Waji. Very soon, folks will want the government to warn them that the food that they, personal individuals, have prepared by themselves is hot. We need to take responsibility for our own actions.
You get it. Thank you. You see, this is sorry. I know we'll close on time, but this is what Nigerians need